Good morning, class. So today we're going to discuss about a lecture on design build services or SPP 207. Okay, so there are two types of design build service. So the first is design build by administration. Then we have the second is design build services on a guaranteed maximum cost. So for the manner of providing services, so in 12.1, the architect may be involved in construction, including that of his or her own design, which means that you could construct your own design or by adopting an arrangement different from the general way of bidding out projects to contractors or from the different modes of design build services. So such an arrangement may take the form of any of the following. So these are the forms. So the first is that the architect is part of the member of the entity which will be constructing his or her design. So she works in tandem with or has authorized an entity to construct his or her design. Then the second is that the architect is himself a state licensed contractor implementing his or her design or that of others. So in adopting any of the above arrangements or any acceptable variation thereof, the architect must strictly adhere to the following. So the first is that the architect must retain his or her separate, distinct professional identity, prerogatives, and integrity as an architect, and is therefore subject to the standards and tenets of the SPP, particularly Document 200, otherwise known as the Code of Ethical Conduct, and SPP Document 202. And second is that whatever the architect adopts in being involved in construction, he or she must strictly adhere to the tenets of the Architect's Credo, with the pledge that he or she shall disclose, whenever required, any business investment or venture that may tend to create a conflict of interest, and ensure that such conflict neither compromises the legitimate interest of the client nor interfere with his duty to render impartial judgment. So this happens, guys, specifically in cases wherein, for example, you're an architect and you also have business interest by owning a hardware store or a certain product. So if you own that product, you may have certain bias towards it. So you should avoid that and should go back to the code of ethical conduct. So for the methods of compensation, so the compensation for the architect performing design build services can be based on the following. So I think this is also the same with the previous services we discussed. So the first is the percentage of the project construction cost, which for me is the simplest. Second is the multiple of direct personal expense. The third is the professional fee plus expenses. The fourth is the lump sum or fixed fee. The fifth is the per diem honorarium plus reimbursable expenses. The sixth is the mixed methods of compensation. The seventh is the built-in, the guaranteed maximum cost. Now let's look into the recommended professional fee. So the recommended professional fee for an architect during design build services by administration shall be 7% of the project construction cost, exclusive of the architect's fee for the regular design services. So your fee is already uh, um, it's not included here because it states exclusive. Okay, so your regular fee, the fee for the regular design services is different from the 7%. So it means that, for example, for a small project worth 1 million, um, for if it's a small residential unit, let's say you get paid by 10%, 100,000 as an architect. Then for your professional fee for the design build service, you also get an additional 7%, which is 70,000. So that's one way to look at it. So you get a total of 170. Then second is the recommended professional fee for an architect doing design build service on a guaranteed maximum cost shall be 10% of the project construction cost. or is already built in the guaranteed maximum cost exclusive of the architect's fee for the regular design service. And these are the manner of payments. The first is that the manner of payment to the architect follows the progress of construction. Of course, it's not something that you will get by book. You should follow the progress of construction. So the architect may bill and be paid for the progress payments during construction proportional to the percentage of progress of completion of the construction work. Should the work be not completed, the prorated RPF component shall be paid to the architect by the client. And then you have here 12.5.2. The client directly pays all costs for labor and materials. The architect does not advance any money for payment of expenditures connected with the work. Generally, a revolving fund is given to the architect beforehand and is accounted for and subject to the periodic auditing by the client. Third, the owner or the client shall pay for the cost of all permits, licenses, and other incidentals to the work. The architect may appoint, subject to the owner, client's approval, a construction superintendent, purchasing agent, timekeeper, and property clerk, aside from the usual labor personnel required. Salaries of such persons are paid by the owner or the client and not deductible from the architect's fee under the SPP. Okay. So this is the design build service, guys. Okay. So we'll just continue again, class. Specifically because we need to look into the details of the design build services. So there's two: design build by administration and design build by guaranteed project construction cost. So again, this is SPP document 207, which replaces the 1979 UAP document 207. So first, okay, let's read again the introduction. So in any building project, there is a need to balance the elements of time, quality, and cost. In many cases, can be best achieved by the architect performing design build service. So the building industry, the architectural profession have devised several methods of project delivery with the ultimate goal of handling projects in the shortest possible time at the lowest possible cost and at acceptable quality and performance. So this means that what we do in the construction industry is that we try to reduce the cost as much as possible. At the same time, reduce the speed, but everything should be within acceptable quality. Okay, so it's written that it's acceptable because oftentimes when you try to reduce the cost, there's also a slight decrease in quality, no matter how you look at it. Then third, an architect with his education, training, and expertise qualifies him to a direct role in the project from conceptualization to implementation. Fourth, the design build service simplifies and expedites the process of project delivery while providing creative cost effective solutions. Then the architect renders professional service in the implementation of his design. In design build services, he assumes the professional responsibility and civil liability for both the design and construction of the project. So if you're doing a design build, you have both the design liability and also the civil liability for its construction. And then there are two types of design build. The first is design build services by administration. So the scope of design build services by administration is similar to that of the architect's regular design service. Now you have the project definition phase, schematic design phase, design development phase, the contract documents phase, and the construction phase. So when the various phases of design services are completed, the construction phase goes beyond periodic inspection assessment. So it now includes the following since you're already into the design build. So it now includes the preparation of schedule of work, program, and estimates of materials, labor, transportation equipment, and services as reference for the construction. We also have the organization and hiring of construction personnel, designation of duties and remunerations, negotiation and entering into contract with piecework contractors, and evaluation for accomplishments, procurement of materials, plants and equipment, licenses and permits, authorizing and undertaking payments of accounts, keeping records and book of accounts, negotiation with the government and private agencies having jurisdiction of their project, and the management of all other business transactions related to the project construction or implementation. Second is the design build service uh, with guaranteed maximum cost. So this method is essentially the same as design build service by administration. So except that the architect provides the owner a guaranteed maximum project construction cost for the construction of the project. So the architect gives the owner client an estimate of the project. If upon completion there is a realized savings from the estimated project construction cost, the savings is equally divided between the owner and the client and the architect. The owner, client, and the architect. So there's a for example, there's a maximum cost and there's savings, so it's going to be divided between the two. The project construction cost is guaranteed by the architect not to exceed 10% of the estimated construction cost. Should the actual cost exceed the estimated construction cost plus 10%, the architect shall be liable for the excess amount, but only up to the amount of his administration fee. Then, should there be additional expenditures beyond the maximum guaranteed construction cost, which are due to legitimate change, variation orders, extra work orders, substantial escalation of prices of the cost of materials or labor, as evidenced by data certified by a nationally recognized agency such as the NEDA, or to other causes not attributable to the fault of the architect, the additional cost shall be borne by the owner or client. Of course, the cost of the materials, guys, it's not something that's stable nowadays, especially that there's a looming crisis. There's a lot of wars going on. So if there are changes which are beyond your control, um, the cost should be shouldered by the client. Okay, so let's look at here the manner for providing services. So the architect may be involved in construction, including that of his own design, by adopting an arrangement different from the general way of bidding out projects or contractors, or from the different modes of design build service. Such an arrangement may take the form of the following. First, the architect is part or a member of the entity constructing the design. I think we discussed this before in the previous document I read. So he works in tandem with or has authorized an entity to construct his design. Second is that the architect is himself a state licensed contractor implementing his design or that of others. And third, in adopting any of the above arrangements or any acceptable variation thereof, the architect must strictly adhere to the following. So the architect must retain his separate, distinct professional identity, prerogatives, and integrity as an architect, and is therefore subject to the standards and tenets of the SPP, particularly SPP Document 200, otherwise known as the Code of Ethical Conduct, and SPP Document 202. So whatever mode the architect adopts in being involved in construction, he must strictly adhere to the tenets of the Architect's Credo, with a pledge that he shall disclose, whenever required, any business investment or venture that may tend to create a conflict of interest, and ensure that such conflict neither compromises the legitimate interests of the client nor interfere with his duty to render impartial judgment. So for me, guys, as an architect, the design build service is my favorite service, because you, it allows you also to learn from different construction techniques, because architecture is not just about designing. You should be able to build your designs and realize that into reality. So knowing different construction techniques, for me, it really helps also in your design, making your design much more realistic, and of course it separates you from the pure artistic component in architecture, because architecture is not just an art, it's also science. So if you are an architect, you should not be someone who only designs, but someone who builds as well, someone who understands how to build his ideas into reality. Okay, so this is just for our lecture this week, guys. So see you next meeting. If you have questions or clarifications, you can send an email or you can message me anytime in our Facebook account. Okay, so keep safe and see you next time.